Are Atlanta/Georgia sports teams cursed? What's up, sports fans? I'm JJ Jurjevich filling in for your host, Todd Corder, tonight. Welcome to ATL Prime Sports. Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at ATL Prime Sports, and always feel free to chime in while we're doing this thing. Individually, at JJ Get You One, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, our producer, and of course at Corder Todd for our one and only TC, who's out tonight. Check us out on YouTube. It's where you'll find our latest videos. Stay tuned to social media. You'll see those. Wayne, how you doing this evening?
After that whole thing with Auburn and South Carolina, I could be better. But that Memphis game was something else. It came down to the last second missed field goal by UCF, and we finally beat them. I think it's been 13 games since we've beat them.
Yeah, you guys had a little streak going in the opposite direction of Memphis. Not the way you want to go there, but you got it done. It was an exciting game. You guys were down double digits with about 6 minutes remaining there and battled back in that game. So hats off to the coaching staff up there in Memphis for showing fight in a game that I honestly, Wayne, I had changed the channel. I did not think they were going to fight back there, but your Tigers came back and proved us wrong.
Yeah, even my mom switched the channel because she was like, okay, they've got the ball. They're fixing to make a field goal. The game's going to be over. But I stick it out to the very end most of the time.
You got to. As a diehard fan, I know what to mean. You got to stick it out to the end. Got lots on tap today. Got a 2-for-1 interview, folks, at Georgia State voice Dave Cohen talking Georgia State football. Simultaneously, we have Kara Richey of 95.3 The Ticket in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and 107.9 of KFIN as well, Jonesboro, Arkansas. We'll be talking Chop, Dogs, and Falcons get their first W and more right here on ATL Prime Sports. Wayne, let's kick this thing off with the sore spot of the weekend. Braves lose in 7.
I tell you, that's
I'll start off with you, Wayne. Was this season a failure? And give me your quick opinion.
I would not consider this season a failure, probably from any team, even as down as my team, the Texas Rangers, because to be able to have a season at all took a lot of effort and a lot of manipulating of schedules and everything. So I think the fans were the winners on this one. It would have been nice if Atlanta could have gone to the World Series, but I guess at this point, I'm just going to pull for Tampa.
Yeah, I'm going to be pulling for Tampa, knowing Austin Meadows, a personal friend of mine, one of my best friend's first cousin. So I am definitely pulling for the Rays. I'm also pulling for the Dodgers. It's a tough one. I'm a National League guy. But you mentioned the Rangers. That's where this all went down, and we all know that's why I was absent last week. Got a hotel room. Friend bought me a ticket. Wayne, what an unbelievable facility. Wow, the field's underground. So when you walk in, you're right on top of the field. Wow. You get a great view from wherever you're sitting. I was sitting in the upper deck. It felt like I was in club level. And, wow, your Texas Rangers have a nice home for the foreseeable future. Their stadium right next door, Globe Life Park, great stadium. People loved it, but it's just too hot. I mean, you had days when it's 110 degrees on the field. Yeah. You can't play there. Now, let's shift it back to the Braves. They did lose in 7. They did have a 3-1 lead, but I'm with you. I don't think this season was a failure, period. And then I'll also go more in depth like this, Wayne. A lot of people are saying this was a blown lead and this was an Atlanta sports blunder again. I don't think so. So. This is a different 3-1 lead. This was an underdog. Yeah, go ahead.
If you make it to the pennant like that, I don't think you can call it a failure. Now, in the case of the Atlanta Falcons, starting the season off with that many losses, that kind of feels like a failure. But Atlanta making it to the pennant race, I think that's not a failure at all.
No, I agree with you. Not a failure in the least bit. A lot of writers are saying it's, again, 3-1 blown lead. I don't see it as that. I just don't, Wayne. And here's why. You had youngsters that pushed the National League dynasty of the Dodgers to the brink. The Braves lost by 1 run. with these youngsters. Ian Anderson gave up his first 2 runs in the postseason last night. Other first things happened while we lost this 3-1 lead as well. I shouldn't say we, the Braves.
Yeah.
Our bullpen gave up its first run. Freed gave up his first run. So those are all 3 things that happened while the lead was at 3-1. So I would say the Braves more ran out of magic. It doesn't seem like a flop to me or a blown lead. This team could build on this. How many teams go to the NLCS after losing at one point in the season all 5 pitchers?
Yeah.
All 5 of their starting pitchers at one point went on the injured list. Most teams don't even make the playoffs with that, Wayne.
Well, exactly.
And the Braves made Game 7 of the National League Championship Series. So by far not a blown lead, in my opinion. Magic ran out. What the Braves can take away from this, though, folks, 3-time NL East champs, Soroka, Freed, Anderson next year. Plus, you got Wright and Wilson, who turned the corner, looked pretty good at times in the postseason. And you got Pache, Albies, Acuna. We all know what they can do. We'll get one more year of Ender Inciarte. He is under contract, so you have a Gold Glover out there to come off the bench, most likely, because I do believe that'll be your outfield. Well, depending on, again, what Markakis wants to do, because that's another one-year deal. But the bullpen's going to remain mostly intact. And then you also get to keep your hot catcher, Travis d'Arnaud, who played masterfully this postseason.
Yeah.
So the Braves had their chances this series, but they pushed the Dodgers to the brink. And as a fan, sure, you're upset. I was upset. If you follow me on Facebook, folks, you saw it. I was literally depressed Saturday night with the Dogs losing, the Falcons losing. I thought the Falcons were going to lose on Sunday, and then the Braves lose the lead. And so they had their chances, Wayne. They really did. What did you think overall of the Braves run and the 72 games they did give us this season?
You know, I look at the season. It was an abbreviated season, and they got into the playoffs, and they really did well going through the pennant race. And it makes me almost feel like there's going to be more to come next season. I feel much more positive about next season than I did the starting of this season.
You have to. And I mentioned several reasons why you can look forward to next year in a full 162-game season slate. So you'll get pretty much your full off season. Pitchers and catchers will report, and hopefully this pandemic has passed and we could play a little bit of normal baseball next year. But no, this is not a flop. This is not a normal 3-1. This is not a normal Dodgers team. I mean, you have guys like Kiki Hernandez and A.J. Pollock coming off the bench. And you look at the 2 home runs from Game 7 last night. The Dodgers battled. That's what they do. Both home runs last night, the clutch home runs from Hernandez and the former MVP Bellinger, 8 pitch at bats. They were battling, fouling off pitches. A.J. Minter was making his pitches. He was hitting his spots. So was Chris Martin. It's just the battle of they were the better team. Look, the Braves only scored 7 runs the last 3 games. They were out hit. They had their chances in Game 6. They had their base running blunders last night. Also, we can go back to Game 6. There was a base running blunder that not a lot of people talk about. Ozzie Albies running down the line, chopper to first. They're throwing it. First baseman fields it, take the tag, and Albies runs around first base and then eventually gets tagged by the first baseman. If he is safe, the Braves eventually score their run, it's the lone run of the game that day. Yeah. What if that's a 3-2 game in the 9th inning? Then that same game, you go into the 9th inning, 2 pitches, 2 outs in the 9th inning. You basically lose your chances right there.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, that one incident brings back some incidents from my history as a baseball player in Little League. I started out in outfield, played center field for several, seasons. And then my last season in Little League, the coach says, "Hey, do you want to play shortstop?" And I said, "Sure, I'll play shortstop." And he says, "Well, what did you play before?" And I said, "Center field." He says, "No, you're on second base." So I played second base. The first game I played second base, I got into what we used to call a pickle between me and first base. And that was probably the fastest heart rate I ever had playing Little League Baseball.
Yeah, pickles are no fun.
No.
Swanson got in one last night. And again, if he stays, who knows how that game ends. There's a couple base running errors I just mentioned, 2 games in a row. Austin Riley should have stayed put. Why make one base running error turn into 2? There was just blunders all over. But honestly, the better team won. They're deep. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Dodgers get off the hump and win their first World Series since 1988. But this is I'll get you my pick later. But this is a classic example. This should be a really good series. Should be entertaining. And again, stay tuned to our pick 6 later on in the show. I will be giving you my thoughts on that series.
Yeah, that 88 win, that was the Oral Hershiser era, wasn't it?
It was, and that was also right around the time the earthquake happened. And then we all know Kirk Gibson's home run, and that is all in that era. So unbelievable season. Hats off to the Atlanta Braves. Not a flop. Stop calling it one.
Yeah.
That's you, outside media, not here at ATL Prime Sports. No. They battled hard. They were in every single game except for the blowout, the blunder, the 11 runs in the first inning. Braves love to do that, by the way.
Well, they're not the only team.
you can't win them all. The Braves won the first 7 of the playoffs, gave us a good run there. They were the last remaining unbeaten team in the playoffs. So a lot of people didn't think they would go 6 games with the Dodgers. They went 7. They had a 3-1 lead. And sure, again, you may want to call it a blown lead, whatever you want to call it. I call it youngsters running out of magic, and the Braves not having the essential pitching that the Dodgers had. Now, the one advantage they did have a full rested Ian Anderson, and he performed fairly well, but just wasn't quite enough. Wayne, any final thoughts on the Braves' NLCS run there?
I'm just looking for next year.
I agree. Looking forward to next year. You got a lot to look forward to. Truist Park should be filled with fans next year, we hope.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. We got 2 guests coming on. We will be bringing those guests in momentarily. In the meantime, why don't we just keep chugging along here? We'll talk about the Dogs and another Georgia sports team that may be cursed against Alabama. Dogs were sent home with their tails tucked, Wayne. Fellas, let's talk about it. Wayne, what's your thoughts on that game? Were you able to catch it?
Yeah, I mean, I watched part of it, but they didn't score in the second half. And it looks to me like, Saban pulled one of his deals there where he made some changes and totally stopped the Dogs from scoring the second half.
Boy, you said that, man, Saban.
Yeah. Well,
and did he make the difference?
Malzahn sometimes, sometimes Malzahn has his number, but sometimes not. So Kirby Smart, a lot of these other coaches are still scratching their heads.
They are, but here's the deal. Gus does have Nick's number. Somehow, some way, when Auburn's a good football team, Gus has him.
Yeah.
Kirby hasn't gotten over the hump. No other former assistant under Nick Saban has beaten him. Now 22-0. The only time it was even close was Kirby Smart 2 times, 1 possession ball games. So he got beat by a 3-possession score. We all know pretty much what happened. They got smoked in the second half. You mentioned it. I mean, the Dogs led 24-20 at halftime, if you can believe it. You can't expect to complete the W.
Yeah.
You don't score in the second half. You can't complete only 45% of your passes at the SEC level and expect to come in and get the job done. We're going to pause that thought right here. Looks like we have one of our guests this evening. And before I butcher, is it Cara or Kara?
It's Kara.
All right.
I was correct. You always go with your first instinct. We have Kara Richey joining us. from 95.3 in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Welcome to ATL Prime Sports, Kara.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the invite. Always fun to just sit around and shoot the breeze a little bit about some college football.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, first off, tell our listeners how to follow you on Twitter and a little bit about yourself in 95.3 and 107.9 over there in Jonesboro and what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm on Twitter at Kara, Kara_Richey, Richey. And what I do Monday through Friday, I host a daily sports radio show that focuses really heavily on Arkansas State athletics and then college sports in general. I've done that for about 4 years now as far as hosting the show, and I've been in sports radio for probably about 7 or 8. And then on game days, I host a show called Wolfpack, which is on the flagship station of A-State Athletics, 107.9 KFIN, and that is the post-game call-in show. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's really, really late, like Thursday night against Georgia State, but it's always a lot of fun.
All right.
Absolutely. And we're joined now by Georgia State voice Dave Cohen. Dave, welcome to the show. We have Kara Richey on tonight. I heard you guys have never met before, and here we go.
Well, I know we follow each other on Twitter, but yeah, we've never met in person. Hey, Kara, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, David. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. High-scoring game last Thursday night, and unfortunately, we did not get out of Jonesboro, Arkansas, with a win. But it was, if you were not tied to either team, it was one of the more entertaining games that you could have watched probably all of last week with regards to up and down the field action and putting points up on the board.
Oh, there's no doubt. Just going through that night and having TweetDeck running and seeing a lot of different college football analysts or fans or whatever, everybody was all about some Fun Belt action that night. And just every time you blinked, it seemed like there was another player in the end zone. And it was maybe a little bit too adventurous for my taste, having a rooting interest. But everybody else in the country seemed to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a high-scoring matchup. I'll ask you guys both the same questions. Let's get a little perspective from the winners and, unfortunately, Dave, from the Panthers and the losing side of things. What was the difference in that ball game, that high-scoring ball game? We'll go with Kara first.
Like one defensive stop at the end of the game. I mean, that's really it. It was just such an incredible back and forth battle, and both teams were able to do just whatever they wanted on offense, pretty much. Arkansas State had such a dynamic pass attack that night, and there's so many gifted wide receivers on that team that they were just able to march it up and down the field through the pass game. Georgia State had a much more balanced night. We saw Quad Brownshaw off the arm and the wheels, and they were able to run it. They were able to throw it, but it seriously came down to, one final drive for Georgia State where Arkansas State actually got a stop. And that truly was it, because it was two evenly matched teams and it was back and forth the whole time. It really just came down to a play there at the end.
Your side.
Well, when we talked about this a few times during our broadcast, it's not that often, and Kara would know this because she's there, that you have a 2-quarterback system and it's not termed by members of the media a quarterback controversy. That's not even a Batman and Robin situation. That's a Batman and a Batman there at Arkansas State, and they just seem to work so well together. I'm not sure if Kara gave you the numbers, but Logan Bonner was 18 of 28, 197, 3 touchdowns, and then Lane Hatcher was 21 of 28, 332 with 4 touchdowns. They did not miss a beat when one would come in and the other would go out. And, at the end of the day, as big of a night as our Sam Pinckney had with 6 catches and 146 yards and a touchdown, look, at the end of the day, one of the best receivers in the Sun Belt Conference, Jonathan Adams, had a really, really good night. And if you're going to get beat by, what historically has been one of the top teams in the Sun Belt Conference, they're going to beat you with two of the top quarterbacks. Again, both had really, really good nights. And then you're going to get beat by one of the top receivers in the league. And that's kind of what happened. And just like she said, it was up and down, big plays. And Arkansas State, they came up with a big stop very, very late in that ball game, and they were able to hold on and win it. And, I'm trying to remember the kid's name. Paul, they ran that trick play, like the reverse, and Lincoln Perry ended up, out of the backfield, ends up coming down the near side and catches a touchdown pass. So they went to the bag of tricks and it worked. And, they had a couple more better plays, and like I said, a late stop as we did. I got my buddy here too. He wants to figure in this. But, they had 34 first downs. We had 25. It was really, up and down the field and up and down the field. And they just came up with a big stop at the end. And, I wasn't quite sure what to expect because I know from following Kara on Twitter, I find out, that, after that big win at Kansas State and after that second win, there were a couple of games that were canceled. The Central Arkansas game initially, and then Tulsa was canceled, and then they played Central Arkansas, put 50 up on the board, and had a tough night at Coastal Carolina. So I really wasn't quite sure what to expect, other than, again, historically, they're one of what I would call the top 4 teams in the Sun Belt Conference. It's a home game, and obviously I knew they had the personnel that if they came out and played well, that it was going to be an interesting night, to say the least.
You're listening to Dave Cohen and Kara Richey right here on ATL Prime Sports. I'll ask you guys both the same question. Again, we'll get both sides of the spectrum here. Was the fourth down efficiency of the Red Wolves the difference in the game? Kara, we'll go with you first.
I thought it was interesting to see Blake Anderson kind of gamble that much at the times he did because especially because Arkansas State just doesn't have much of a run game right now. This has been a problem now for both of its Sun Belt games. It was A-State was doing a little better running the ball at the beginning of the year, but that's kind of ground to a halt just a little bit against Coastal Carolina and then last Thursday against Georgia State. So they converted a couple 4th and 2s early in the game. Actually, they were 2 for 2 on 4th and 2, but then you had a 4th and 1 there, I think, sometime in the third quarter. And 4th and 1, everybody on the planet knows you're going to run the ball, and they cannot convert. Georgia State stopped them there, but they were able to battle back. And I think there was one more 4th down in addition to that, where Arkansas State was able to get that conversion. And again, I was a little bit surprised that Blake Anderson gambled on some of those plays, but A-State just really needed to extend some drives. They've been on the way wrong side of the time of possession lately, and so you needed to have the offense out there a little bit longer. You needed to be able to move the chains, and with the 2 quarterbacks that they had playing the way that they did, you just need, once you start moving those chains, that offense moves so quickly, and then you have the explosive plays. The next thing you know, Jay Adams is in the end zone.
I would say, obviously, when you go 3 for 4 on 4th down opportunities, I'll have to go back and see on those 3, did they end up scoring with 59 points? I'm sure they probably did. Those were definitely big. And as I mentioned, they had 34 first downs. They I think were 11 plus minutes on time of possession. They were plus 11. So obviously those 4th down conversions, played a big part. And again, kudos to them. When you're playing with the kind of confidence that you're going to go for it on 4th down and convert 3 out of 4 times, you're having one of those kind of nights. And they're having one of those kind of nights, as evidenced by 59. Normally you put 52 up on the board, you think you're going to leave with a win. And that wasn't the case. But, we've seen that before. Seems like we scored 50 against them. I forget, it was like 52-38 or whatever last year in Atlanta. Every time Georgia State and Arkansas State get together, you better bring an extra pen with plenty of ink, because as I'm writing down the plays, the scoring plays, I got to make sure I don't run out of ink, because it always turns out to be a high scoring affair.
Yeah. First to 50 wins.
Pretty much.
That's the way it went for Memphis this weekend. That was a really high scoring game against UCF, and I always like to see UCF get beat, and then it's even better if Memphis does it.
It's always great. Again, you're listening to Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, and Kara Richey right here on ATL Prime Sports. Kara from 95.3 in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Folks, we'll go with the same thing. What did Coach Anderson say after the game about improving on the defense from the Red Wolves side of things? And then, Dave, I'll ask you the same question from Coach Elliott. We'll go with you, Kara, first.
Well, the big news on Friday was that Arkansas State's defensive coordinator and defensive pass game coordinator were relieved of their job duties. So that was pretty big in the sense that there's just got to be widespread changes there. This defense, I honestly don't know where you start because I don't know what they're good at. And I'm not trying to be super negative, but I think in theory this is supposed to be a bend but don't break defense. But they've given up scores to on every red zone possession. I think except 2 this year. The opposition is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 19 of 21 in terms of scoring in the red zone. So that's not bending but not breaking by any stretch of the imagination. This team gives up a ton of third down conversions on defense. You've been able to run on this team. The opposition has been able to pass on this team. And I don't know what you look at and you say, all right, well, this is something positive, and this is something that Arkansas State and its defense can build on. I think the defense is going to get better because some of the issues that A-State has had this year is the most recent round of COVID outbreaks that A-State had. There were a lot of symptomatic players. In a perfect world, the kids get it. They're all 18, 19. They're asymptomatic. They're back in a week and a half and everybody's good. That wasn't the case. There were some significant issues there. And some of the players, we saw it more against Coastal Carolina a couple of weeks ago after those 2 games had been postponed. It looked like some of the A-State defenders were just underwater because it had taken out like the entire linebacking crew and a couple of defensive backs. So the defense is going to get better because those players are healthier. But we've heard Blake Anderson talk a lot about how this is a young team. The secondary especially is very youthful, and that they just have to mature quickly. And now you've got some really big defensive changes, and I don't know what we're going to see from the defense from here on out. Nick Perimsky is now the new interim defensive coordinator, and he's tasked with, a pretty tough challenge of making this defense improve that has really struggled over the past 18 or so games.
I'll ask you the same. What can Coach Elliott improve on, and what does he say needs to be worked on this week in practice?
Well, they've played, 5 games? We've played 3. We lost the opener in overtime and gave up 34. We came back, held East Carolina to 29, and then we give up 59. So, 3 games in, we should be 6 games in, but we're not. I think to some extent, we kind of mirror Arkansas State. We can score with the best of them. And run up and down the field and realize, we played that game, and this is not an excuse because 2 guys really stepped up, Sam Pinckney and Tucker Gregg, but we played that game without our, I guess you'd call him our number 1 wide receiver in Cornelius McCoy, and without our number 1 running back in Destin Coates. Again, correct. No way is that an excuse because 2 guys stepped up and had fantastic games in Tucker and Sam Pinckney. But I think our problem is probably somewhat similar along the lines to Arkansas State, is that we can score with the best of them, but we do struggle to keep people out of the end zone. And I guess I'm a little surprised at that this year because, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, we're experienced in all 3 phases of our defense. We're playing with experienced guys up front. We're playing with experienced guys in the middle. Matter of fact, one of our inside linebackers, Trajan Stevens-McQueen, is our returning leading tackler. And he's surrounded by guys that have played quite a bit. And, we've brought in, a couple of impact players in the backfield, in Antavius Lane and Chris Moore, the transfer from Virginia. So, again, the credit goes to Bonner and Hatcher. Those guys played a fantastic football game on Thursday night on national television and tore us up. Again, if you look at the numbers, we were a whole lot more balanced than they were. I think we held them to 58 yards. I mean, it was 500 something yards in the air, and barely any yards on the ground, and we were a lot more balanced. 314 in the air and 269 on the ground. They were 551 and 58. So that kind of shows you the difference. I mean, our secondary had a tough night, and our pass rushers did not do that good of a job getting pressure, on Bonner and Hatcher. I mean, they had time to obviously throw the football and identify their receivers, and they did a good job. I forget exactly how many different receivers caught passes. I want to say it was at least 6 or 7.
They spread the ball around. Absolutely. And now that's the we've talked about it. Nowadays, with the pass interference calls and everything like that in college football and even at the pro level, you got to get to the quarterback. That's your best defense, is getting to the quarterback, shortening that window. And just neither team it just gave anything up in that aspect. 580 yards, 600 yards of offense for the Red Wolves. Exciting game to watch on national television, you guys both mentioned. Let's move on. Carol, we'll go to you. How can our listeners follow you, and what's next for Red Wolves football?
So you can keep up with the show at 953theticket.com, and I'm on Twitter at Kara_Richey. Next up, it's another short week. Actually, it's a full week, but it feels like a short week on the show because it's another Thursday night game. Arkansas State going to be on the road on Thursday at Appalachian State, taking on the Mountaineers. And I have no idea what to expect. App State is a very good team. They're the preseason Sun Belt favorite. They've been good for a few years now, but they started out the offseason. Of course, there was a coaching change with Eli Drinkwitz moving off to Mizzou. He was only there for 1 year anyways. And then you had kind of the COVID situation with Sean Clark taking over. And now you have a App State team that hasn't played, I don't think, since September the 26th. They've had several COVID issues, so they've had 2 different games that have been postponed. And anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen Thursday night in Boone is lying, because you're looking at a team that wasn't even, I don't even know if they were allowed in their facility in 3 weeks. They have not been working out. They finally got back on the football field last Thursday. So again, you've got an App State team that hasn't been able to practice. You've got an Arkansas State team that just fired its defensive coordinator. So good luck figuring out this one. Maybe take the over.
Yeah. The only guarantee in the Sun Belt this year seems to be Coastal Carolina.
It's the Chanticleers.
Yeah,
their quarterback is no joke. Grayson McCall is gonna terrorize some Sun Belt defenses for 4 years. He's a redshirt freshman. He's very good.
All right,
David. The same. What's next for Georgia State football, and how can our listeners tune in this week?
Well, we're on the road again this week. We'll be over at lovely Troy, Alabama. That'll be Saturday afternoon at 4. And once again, another nationally televised game. The Sun Belt, as we talked about last week, has really been, taking advantage of the craziness in the Power 5 schedule this year, because it seems like almost every Sun Belt game is nationally televised this year. So anybody that was not familiar with the Sun Belt, anybody from here on out that says they can't name the nickname and the mascot for any Sun Belt team is lying, because if they are, they're just not watching television. But we're at Troy. It's a 4:00 game on Saturday. Again, it's nationally televised. We're on radio 4:00 on 88.5, 50,000 watt FM right here in Atlanta. Of course, streaming, TuneIn Radio, and all that kind of stuff. You can follow us at GA State Voice. But we were keeping up with that Troy game on Saturday. They barely escaped Eastern Kentucky. Had to kick a field goal late in the game to win it, which was kind of surprising. Someone texted me and said Eastern Kentucky's about to beat Troy. And so I quickly switched over. I was just following it on my phone. And, Troy ended up kicking a field goal, I guess, with little or no time left to escape the Colonels. It's just like Arkansas State. Every time we go over to Troy, now we beat Troy last year in Atlanta. But every time we go over there, it's always really interesting. And, for whatever reason, they always seem offensively to come up with their best whenever they see the Panther Blue coming down I-85 headed over towards Troy.
All right, guys, one last final question for both of you guys. Kind of a scenario here. Sun Belt has an undefeated conference champ at the end of the year. Why do they deserve to get into the New Year's Six? Go. Kara.
I think this league has shown that it is a much better league than maybe national perception has thought in the past few years. You've got a league that went 3-0 over the Big 12. I mean, Coastal Carolina is the Big 12 champion already, and we're midway through October. And we've seen this league go out and just perform very well. There is still a little bit of work to do for this league to be consistent from top to bottom, but that's the same in any league. I mean, not even the SEC has teams top to bottom that are amazing. Vanderbilt's always going to suck. So you look at this Sun Belt Conference and you look at the teams at the top, you look at the talent at Coastal Carolina, you look at what App State has been building, you look at the Raging Cajuns, their dynamic running game. There is talent on the field in the Sun Belt week in and week out. There are good teams playing week in and week out. So you make a run this year, in a year where this is the craziest year that college football has ever seen. It's right up there with 2007, where you had like 17 teams that were ranked at number 2 for at least a week at a time, and then it just got weird. If you survive a season like this and you go undefeated, you deserve a massive reward at the end of it, and the Sun Belt should be there. They're worthy.
I agree. Dave?
Well, you guys know from previous shows that I felt like that with my treehouse analogy that the Power Five has this really nice treehouse. And under normal circumstances, they only like to invite about, 10 to 12 teams up into the treehouse, and then they pull the ladder up on the rest of us. And we play out the season, and we all go to a bowl game, and, we finish out the season. With the way the Power Five has gone this year, with the SEC not playing non-conference, and the Big Ten not playing yet, and the Pac-12 not playing yet, as I said, all of these Sun Belt games that have found themselves on national television have hopefully opened people's eyes that, there is football outside of the SEC and the ACC. I think we can say that here in the South, but, so many people, when they watch football, it's blinders on. All they know is the SEC and the ACC. And the only time they ever hear of the Sun Belt, and again, they probably don't even know our mascots, is when we pull into town for one of those early season guarantee games, which have been few and far between this year. Again, Arkansas State got one, and they got a nice win earlier in the season. So, I'm for a 12-team playoff, the 10 teams that win each of their individual Division I leagues, and then you can have two wild card teams and play it that way. And if it's Coastal Carolina deserves to get a shot. I'm not saying they're going to run the table. Listen, they're going to get plenty of opposing Sun Belt teams' best shots the rest of the year. Georgia State being one of them at our place. That's a game that could end up being another high-scoring affair. So, I don't know if it'll be a New Year's Six, but I feel like that, this would be the perfect year to have a 12-team playoff. The 10 FBS leagues get their champion in the playoff, and you got 2 wild cards. It's, whoever it is coming out of the Sun Belt, and going to be, and they get a shot at it. It would be a miniature version. It would be college football's version of the NCAA basketball tournament.
Yeah.
And it would be the best television in the world. Period.
Of course it would. It would. But you and I both, we all know it. Listen, it comes down at the end of the day to money and finances. And again, they don't want to invite anybody to the table to share in the pie. And I guess if I was seated at the table, I might not want to either, but I'm not seated at the table, and Kara's not seated at the table. We would both like to be at the table. And I feel like everybody should be at the table. Not us necessarily, but the student athletes.
Absolutely.
The student athletes practice in the Sun Belt just as much as they do in the SEC and the ACC. Right?
And I've mentioned it to you before, Dave, on previous shows. I think it's full of baloney that basically Georgia State on any given Saturday can't compete for a national championship unless the tiles fall in the correct order. So I think that's bogus. I think that needs to change. I fully agree with that. And I think they may have a shot this year at a New Year's Six. I think it could happen. And Chanticleers, they're not just dream fantasy. That's a real thing this year. They're legit at football. They're amazing to watch. Well, Kara, Dave, as always, thanks for coming on ATL Prime Sports. You guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
All right. Appreciate it, you guys. Take it easy.
All right.
Kara. It's Dave and Kara Richey. Dave Cohen, Kara Richey. Wow, that was an unbelievable interview, Wayne. Good stuff all around. I'm all for a 12-team playoff. We've been for that. You're a Memphis Tigers fan. They deserve a crack at it. Heck, if Hawaii has another great run, they deserve every bit of it again. So what a wonderful, wonderful wonderful interview. You can catch Kara Richey again on 95.3 in Jonesboro, Arkansas. You can catch her on Twitter at Kara_Richey. And, of course, Dave Cohen at Georgia State Voice. Always glad to have them on. Let's get back into it, Wayne. We were talking before Dave and Kara came on about the Dogs and how they got shut out in the second half. You can't really win a lot of football games doing that. You can't expect a whole lot from Stetson Bennett when he's getting balls batted down at the line of scrimmage. I think it was 4 or 5 of them, Wayne. Yeah. And that just can't happen. They were flat-faced in the second half. UGA's defense gave up 400-plus yards passing for the first time since 2009. So it's been 11 years since that happened. Mac Jones basically and his 2 star wide receivers, Waddle and Smith, pounded Georgia. And that's kind of where we left off. What are your thoughts on Georgia's SEC East title hopes / SEC title hopes, Wayne?
Well, I don't want to bet the entire bank on it, but they look better than any other team in the East at this point, because all the other teams have had losses to teams that weren't as good as Alabama.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Georgia's still the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, whatever you would like to call it. Look, Stetson Bennett had a bad night. Again, we mentioned the back down passes. He had 3 picks. Georgia started off the game. They forced a turnover on Mac Jones. Everything's looking good. Georgia turns it right back over with the batted balls. One of those batted balls goes right into the hands of the defensive lineman there. And it goes right back, and Mac Jones and Alabama start from there. So, again, Waddle, Smith connected for over 300 yards of offense by themselves. I think together they had 3 touchdowns. So, basically, Mac Jones and his 2 receivers with Najee Harris destroyed the Bulldogs. It was a good game in the first half. We mentioned the second half. They pulled away. Georgia had their chances. They missed a field goal, which is very rare. Georgia doesn't miss a lot of those the last couple of years, especially with Hot Rod and Podlinski being as pretty accurate as he has been thus far. Missed the field goal, would have made it a 14-point game. Maybe changed things around, but it did not. Again, the game really changed right at the beginning of the second half when Mac Jones completed his a deep pass with Jalen Waddle for 90 yards and ended up putting the Tide up for good. They beat Tyson Campbell, who I think is one of the best players in college football, number 3. He lost his footing at about the midfield, 45-yard line. Waddle took it deep. That really changed the game. That got the momentum going in Alabama's favor. And we mentioned it right before Dave and Kara came on. Good Lord, Nick Saban makes a difference, doesn't he, Wayne?
Yeah, I also think he must instill some kind of never give up attitude or never let your foot off the gas attitude, because it seems like teams come into the second half against Alabama and they feel like if they're close or have a lead, that the other team kind of lets up, and Alabama does not.
They just know how to do it. And again, it's now 22-0 against his former assistants. They have no chance. I really thought Georgia was going to win that game. I thought they were the better team. Yeah. The game's not played on paper, and that's my final thought on this game. Any things to wrap up the Georgia-Alabama debacle?
No, I'm just glad we're not talking about Auburn and South Carolina.
Hey, that's another one we could pull that one out. That was a big win for Will Muschamp. We won't talk about it much, but to pull the Band-Aid off quickly, big win for Will Muschamp.
Absolutely.
Bad loss for Gus. Huge buyout for Gus. As an Auburn fan, what's your thoughts on that?
I don't think they need to make any coaching changes. I think they need to have the quarterback, Bo Nix, warm up before the game instead of during the game.
I agree. I think Bo Nix has gotten a little – to me, this is just from a guy. Knows the game of football. I think Bo Nix, when Joey Gatewood left, got a little chunk of confidence and got a little too confident. He's trying. I've seen 2 or 3 intentional grounding penalties that turned out to be pretty costly. because he's trying to throw out a thing. Just take the sack.
Yeah.
Or don't try and turn the ball over. He's been very careless with the football. That changes. I think Auburn changes.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, he doesn't seem to be warmed up during the first quarter and a half of the football game. He's throwing behind receivers, over receivers, like you said, throwing the ball away when he's obviously flushed out of the pocket.
Can't do anything. Yep.
All right.
You're right.
We can move on to our pick six here.
Yeah, well, we'll go Falcons real quick. Falcons real quick. The Falcons got a new coach and got a new result. Fellas, let's talk about it. Matt Ryan threw for 371 and 4 touchdowns on 40 attempts. Falcons head into held a lead, I should say. Shouldn't head. They held the lead for the first time this season. Had 2 previous blown leads versus the Dallas Cowboys and the Chicago Bears we all know about. First win comes on the road, Wayne, 40-23, a big win. What are your thoughts on that? I know you said you wanted to get something off your chest in the pre-show. What did you want to get off your chest here?
Well, I tell you, let me ask you this question. Did the Atlanta Falcons have any player changes on offense or defense going into this game?
It's a really good question. Except for maybe Julio Jones jumping into the lineup, no.
Yeah. Okay. And did they have any type of offensive or defensive schemes change going into that game?
I know where you're going. The answer to that question is no.
Yeah. Well, I really think that the players had a lot to do with running that coach out of there. And they moved the defensive coach up to head coach, and the defense was the worst part of the Atlanta game. And now all of a sudden they're playing and winning and leading the entire game. It makes me think that they've pulled an Aaron Rodgers and just gotten rid of the coach. Now they're getting, okay, now we can play. And that's irritating me.
And I said that a couple weeks ago. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery, or as I like to call it, a scene of changery, just to be funny. Now, here's the deal. Falcons jumped out to a 20-0 lead. They did that against Dallas. They held on to this one again. Julio Jones had his first 2 touchdowns of the season. That was huge. Yeah. Again, first 2 touchdowns of the season. Week 6, that's a problem. Defense recorded 3 turnovers in the first half. Really helped the field position, changed the game, which helped get the offense going. Look, Gurley didn't have the best game, but he did have 20 carries. What else did I like about it? What have I been preaching? What number, Dwayne? 25. Yeah. That's what he got. He got 3 catches out of the backfield. He was targeted, I believe, 2 or 3 more times. That's your 25, folks. 25. And he got around 80 yards of total offense, right around that number. You get Todd Gurley that number. You get Julio Jones his touches. You spread the ball out. We can look like 2016. This team has the talent. I think that's why it's frustrating. This is a bittersweet win in a disappointing sports weekend.
Yeah. Well, I would appreciate it if they would have played like that at the beginning of the year from a fan's point of view.
You're right. No, and that's it. Simply sit back. All we can do is give our opinions as broadcasters and be fans on the backside of it. You know, I'm a Falcons fan. I try and be as unbiased and pure as possible. But, yeah, as a fan, where was this week 2, week 3?
Yeah. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens this upcoming week. I'm trying to remember who they have to play.
Well, you are correct. It's in the pick 6. We got the Lions this week.
Okay.
And this is actually the first time. And, yeah, it's in Atlanta. The first time, I believe, Matt Stafford has played the Falcons in Atlanta. I think last time he was hurt. So let's go ahead and we'll foreshadow it. Let's get to the pick 6. Wayne, shall we?
Yeah.
All right, Wayne, I'll just fire them off. I'll let you pick first.
All right.
Give me a little nugget if you got it, or just give your pick. So we'll go 3 games in the NCAA level, a ranked versus ranked matchup. The NC State Wolfpack at 4-1, the UNC Tar Heels at 4-1. North Carolina 16.5-point favorites early. What do you like, and who and
Well, I think UNC will win this game. They're playing at home. They exposed some weaknesses against Florida State last week, so I do not think they're going to cover 16.5 points. It's going to be maybe a touchdown, maybe 10 points. It's not going to be that much. And NC State has proven that they can win on the road.
I like it. I like it. Perfect pick. I'm taking NC State in the points as well. I think North Carolina will win that game, but Wayne, I'm with you. 7 to 10 points, nowhere near 16.5. Let's go to game number 2. Number 17, the Iowa State Cyclones, who took a Sun Belt Conference loss on the chin at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys and Mike Gundy come in ranked number 6 at 3-0. Oklahoma State minus 3.5. Wayne, who do you like?
That's the toughest game that you've picked out here, because that game could absolutely come down to one of these final kicks, final possessions. 3.5, it may even be less than that. It may be one of these 1-point games, but something inside me says that Iowa State's got the edge on this.
I'm going Iowa State outright as well, Wayne. Yep. We'll go to the third game. Another ranked versus ranked matchup. They're all over the place this weekend. Big Ten football is back.
Yeah.
Number 18, Michigan, 0-0. First game of the year again, coming in against number 21, 0-0. Don't tell me how they're ranked. Don't ask me why. Dave Cohen knows the answer. Michigan's 2.5-point favorites. I'm going to go quick. I don't know anything about the teams. Michigan wins the game.
Yeah. I think Michigan will win, but I don't look for it to be a cut and dried affair until, again, end of the game, maybe last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, this is going to be a warm-up game for both teams, and it's unfortunately a top 25 matchup right off the bat. Michigan on the road. Row your boat. Game day will be there. I like Michigan, but they're going to sink the boat. NFL, let's move on. We mentioned the game. Lions, Falcons. Falcons are somehow 3-point favorites.
Well, it's because they're picking them favorites because they're at home, and obviously they don't have any confidence in either team because they're picking them that way. But I'm going to pick Atlanta to win because I'm a huge fan, and I always pick them to win, but then I get disappointed a lot.
Lions in the points. Atlanta wins by a 1-point Younghoe Koo last-second field goal. Atlanta 29.
Yeah.
Lions 28. But Lions cover the spread. Steelers, Titans, battle of unbeatens, battle of Goliaths in the AFC.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, James Conner, Tannehill versus Roethlisberger. Pittsburgh's 1.5-point favorites. Who do you like in this game, Wayne?
That's ridiculous. I don't know who picked this, but the Titans are going to win by a touchdown, maybe 10 points.
We're on the same page the entire day here. Hats off to you. I'm going with the Titans and Derrick Henry. I picked against them twice this year. I've gotten burned. Not going to do it again. Let's pick this World Series. It kicks off Tuesday night. Dodgers, Rays. Dodgers are heavy favorites. Wayne, who do you got?
I'm taking the Rays in 7.
Rays in 7. You got a 7-game series. Dodgers in 4, maybe 5. I think every game's a battle, but I think the Dodgers finally get the hump off their back from 1988. Dodgers in a gentleman's sweep, I'll call it final. Dodgers in 5.
All right.
Wayne, it's been a pleasure, man. Any final thoughts for the show tonight?
Memphis got a game coming up, and it is against Temple at home, and that's going to be Saturday. My son is in the marching band there. He has yet to go to a game because they have split the band up into 5 different bands, and they're rotating them in and out. So maybe someday down the road he'll get to be up in the stands playing.
Well, that's great news. Well, we will always pay attention to that. Dogs are off this weekend. Falcons, Lions. I'm taking Lions in the point. Falcons will win by 1. That's my wrap-up. For Wayne, for TC, who I'm filling in for tonight, it's been a pleasure. For Dave and Kara, pleasure being on the show with you guys tonight. Get you one of these. We'll see you same time, same place next week, huh, Wayne?
All right, man.